All right, folks. Good evening, WNBA and women's basketball fans, on a very great Wednesday night with two more exciting games on your WNBA menu for this Wednesday night. Good evening, folks. A two-man game tonight here on the WNBA 365 Network, your comprehensive home for everything women's basketball and, of course, the WNBA. Join the night, folks. Two-man game as mentioned. Joined the night by Crystal Thomas in Los Angeles. Don Moher joining you folks here from the Calamac Sports Studios in San Diego. Crystal, good evening. Good to see you. How's it going tonight?
It is going well. I'm a little hungry and tired, but I am fine.
That makes two of us. With that, folks, as usual, your input greatly and gladly appreciated here, folks, over on Facebook at facebook.com/WNBA365. Find us on Twitter at WNBA365, at Calamac3, rep Pup1010, hashtag is WNBA365, or find the live chat box in the right corner of your screen. Give us some questions, comments, concerns, and we'll get to them when we have a chance here tonight on this two-man game for the program this evening. Crystal, two games tonight, and again, two pretty exciting games. Of course, one that we had talked about last night was very somewhat of a media firestorm. Of course, the Mystics and Sky. The first game, of course, marked for Elena Deladon's return back to Chicago this morning. The Mystics beat the Sky 82-67. EDD 21 points in their first game back in Rosemont. Here up in Pratt, 15 points to help co-lead the way for the Mystics. The Sky were led by Cappy Pondech with 17 points and Tamara Young with 14 points. On the morning, I should say, the Mystics are now 2-2. The Sky falter to 1-3, and just north of 6,700 people in the building this afternoon in Chicago and this morning on the West Coast. And again, Crystal, I know that we had really kind of talked about this game and the scenarios here, of course, of Deladon's first game back in Chicago. What kind of reception she got. Basically, Crystal, she said, I don't care about the ovation I'm going to get. I'll let the game do the talking for me. And we saw KT why she's been in the MVP conversation and why she was so beloved in Chicago up until this season. Crystal, for the Mystics, more importantly, though, probably a game that I think a lot of people would say was probably a very important win, considering how they have gotten off to a kind of a rocky start as they have in recent years. But of course, this year, with probably for the first time in a long time, Crystal, for the Mystics, they had more hype and somewhat more publicity too in regards to how they had this whole roster remodel of the offseason with Deladon and Tolliver coming in to fill some spots, and of course, somewhat give the Mystics their first true superstars in probably recent years, and also maybe even franchise history. Crystal, what do you think about the Mystics? And also, first question about this: was this an important victory for Washington this early in the season? What do you think? Okay, I think Crystal's having some problems here. And again, we had some of these last night. But again, folks, once more, the Mystics win 82-67 this morning. Again, Crystal, let me re-ask that first question for you again. Do you believe that perhaps, and I know that we don't like to, grade teams on one game or two game performances, but Crystal, do you think that with the Mystics having so much hype and publicity about them this season, that this was presumably a very important win to keep their season, at least in the early stages, somewhat alive, considering that they would have lost this game and faltered to 1-3? That would have been a lot of panic perhaps in the DC area. But what do you think, though, about the importance of this victory for the Mystics this morning?
Sorry about the technical difficulty first.
No problem.
Honestly, even if they would have went to 1-3, it's still early in the season. I mean, there's a lot of games to play. There's a lot of basketball to be shown, and I think that's what fans do. Fans panic anyway, especially when they feel that their team is a contender, or especially if they feel that their team could, possibly be there at the end of the season. But I mean, they won. I mean, the score was pretty at the end, but the game itself wasn't pretty. I mean, the Washington played a game that was kind of so-so. There was a lot of stuff that they probably needed to fix, but I know for EDD, it's probably a good win, because I'm pretty sure she wanted to go back to Chicago and beat them, and she did.
Crystal, I think too, at least for Washington's sake, once more in regards to this victory before we get to Chicago, and for the Mystics at least, if you're a Mystics fan and you see these moves made, you're probably automatically thinking, okay, playoffs somewhere, past round one, past round two. I think, Crystal, this is worth knowing, though, that the Mystics, I believe, are the lone team in the entire league's history to not have advanced to the WNBA finals in their franchise history as of yet. So, Crystal, where is the optimism, though, if you are a fan of the Mystics right now when your team is 2-2 and, again, somewhat in the playoff picture through 4 games? How optimistic should fans be that this team does start firing on all cylinders sometime very soon?
I think if you're a fan of your team, you're going to be optimistic anyway. I mean, you have 3 of the league's best. Well, now it seems more like 1.5, but you would have 3 of the league's best scorers on your team. I think as a Mystics fan, you're happy. You're probably not too content on them going to the finals yet. Playoffs definitely, but I don't know if I think a lot of Mystics fans know that they're probably not a finals bound team yet, but they'll definitely make the playoffs. So if you're a Mystics fan, you're just happy with their start right now so far.
KT, also with the Sticks once more in regards to this, again, they get the win today, 82-67, to again even their record at 2-2, and again that creates a pretty big logjam of teams with 2-1 records or 2-2 records so far through 3 or 4 games played for every respective ball club so far. Crystal, I think that with Washington as well is something that you and Shorty had brought up too with one of our Twitter followers last night was about the combo of Emma Meesseman and Deladon right now not working yet. And Crystal, I think that they could have had time to work on that, somewhat that dynamic duo, what we've seen with either the Lynx or with Phoenix or in New York with Rogers and Charles, or even with the Sparks and Wnba and Parker. But Crystal, does Emma Meesseman's absence, somewhat in your mind, hurt their chances of improving how they will play together and mesh as a unit so far, with, of course, Meesseman going away to partake in the Eurobasket tournament coming up in a couple of weeks?
I think it could hurt, yeah. It seems like Meesseman's kind of not getting in the swings of things yet anyway, but I think it will hurt them. I mean, Meesseman is definitely another scoring option whenever she is able to get the touches. If they have another game like they did today where they could get, players like TRP, Lotta, and Hawkins involved, then maybe they'll be okay. But Meesseman is definitely a big part of that team. I think they'll miss her a lot. For their sake, they better hope that they could do a lot without her. But, she's a really big part of that team.
Crystal, also with, again, once more with Washington, once more again, and we saw this kind of firsthand on Friday when Washington was in LA last week, was somewhat of, it was the Deladon and company show again, where EDD was really just out there playing her game, but really Crystal looked like they don't have a whole lot of help in that game on Friday or even on Sunday. Crystal, how vital will it be for other players on the Mystics to step up and help take the load off Deladon throughout the course of the season?
Very vital. I mean, you said it already. So far through the Mystics 4 games, it's pretty much been all EDD. Yeah, Tolliver had a nice game in LA, and of course you had Tiana Hawkins and TRP and Lotta, who had a good game today. But if they want to go as far as they plan on it, they're going to need a lot more, especially from Tolliver. I mean, Tolliver was 2 of 6, and I believe this is her 3rd game of having like a 2 of 5, 2 of 6 game, and we're not really used to seeing that from Tolliver. You're normally used to seeing her, play a little bit better and get her points. And I know it's early; it's only 4 games, so maybe eventually they'll pick it up. Maybe eventually more of the team will step up. But they're definitely going to have to start playing not just around EDD, but around their other players as well.
Crystal, now to the Chicago Sky again. They falter now to 1-3 on the season with the loss earlier this morning. They were led again by Kathy Pondexter and Tamara Young, who combined today for 31 points, 17 for Pondexter, 14 for T. Young this morning. But, Crystal, I think we all said, though, during making our predictions for the game last night was if Chicago's offense isn't in rhythm, they are going to be in trouble, and they were not really in sync today, it looked like. Maybe in stretches early in the game, somewhat kind of keeping pace, but something, again, from the Sky just did not go right this morning for this ball game. Crystal, any takeaways from the Sky today, and what problems really, though, in your mind, really catch your eye, though, as you see this team play through 4 games?
Chicago or Washington?
Chicago.
See, this is the thing. Chicago was in there until like about the 3rd quarter, and I think if Chicago can figure it out, if they don't live so much by the jumper. I mean, Chicago's another team that's like Washington. They want to live so much by that jumper. They're going to live and die by that jumper. There was a point where Chicago could have very well won the game. They were very much so in it, and they just wanted to take jump shots and instead of getting, going to the basket and jabbing it in. I mean, it's not like Washington has a rim protector like that. Misa Min's not gonna really do much damage down there defensively. EDD, I mean, yeah, she might get a nice block or two, but ideally, I think you have a pretty nice chance, especially with Dolson. I think if they could have kept feeding it to Dolson and kept getting in the inside instead of taking jump shots, I think they could have very well been in it. But Washington, no, I'm sorry, not Washington. Chicago, if they can stop shooting the ball so much and just kind of start playing better defensively. Defensively is kind of what killed them. I think they'll have a chance. I mean, what are they? They're 1-3, right? If I remember correctly. Yeah, I mean it's still early. Um, they should be getting Sloot back. I mean, they just got Quigley back, who had a really good game for them. If they can get those two back and add more scoring, because especially to Cappy, if they can add help for Cappy, because Cappy had a really good game too, I think they'll be okay.
And Crystal, I think the other point with Chicago is, again, with Quigley and Sloot coming back so late, and again, along with, of course, Carson, Parker, Lavender, all them missing at least missing one game, or at least two as well with them. Of course, with that the overseas commitments. Crystal, I think you just touched base on this, but how vital do you think could Vandersloot and Quigley, if both healthy, what could their role be for the Chicago team throughout the course of the season?
Once they get Vandersloot back.
Once they get him back, yes.
You know what? I think Chicago still might struggle a little bit, but I think it will help them a lot, especially offensively. Defensively, they seem to be okay. I mean, not great, but they seem to be decent. They seem to be able to stop the ball. They seem to be able to get stops, but it's just they just couldn't get the ball in the basket. Like there was a certain point where they would just chuck up shots and yeah, a lot of those were forced because they saw Washington starting to get on their tails, but I think if they could get Quigley back if they could get Sloot back to help with Quigley and Cappy and to help with what Dolson was doing down there, I think they'll be fine.
So again, folks, Mystics over the sky today, 82-67 from Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Illinois. Attendance today, 6,714. Washington is now 2-2 on the year. The Sky fall to 1-3. Last game for the night, Crystal, the Sparks and Fever. The Sparks kicking off a 3-game road trip through Indy, ATL, in New York this week. The Sparks had a 15-point lead, and they let this one down the drain. The Fever win the game. Very epic game, though, nonetheless, though, Crystal. 93-90. Fever pick up the victory over L.A. Nneka Ogwumike, game-high 24 points for the Sparks. And for the game today, Candace Parker, 19 points. Marissa Coleman, red-hot game for her, 19 points for Indiana. And Candace Dupree, 18 points for the Fever in their very impressive win today over the defending champs. Total attendance tonight, 5,875. LA is now 2-1. Fever also back to 502-2 on the young season. Crystal, we'll start with the Sparks first, of course, with them being the visiting team today. Obviously, it looked great through 2 quarters of play, Crystal, but then the wheels came off the bandwagon again, blowing a 15-point lead, forcing shots, bad defensive, some bad stretches on defense, leaving a few wide open shots. But ultimately, Crystal, you look at the mistakes, and obviously look like in somewhat minor mistakes that, of course, can be fixed. But Crystal somehow, though, brings back, either bad memories of the second half of the season last year or even, maybe even a couple seasons back, sloppy defense, sloppy offensive play, forcing shots, being forced into very bad situations. Crystal, it looked good for 2 quarters, but in your mind, what went wrong, though, for LA in the second half of play, in your mind?
Oh, man, everything. I mean, they got complacent. They felt like, we're up by 14. We don't have to do much. They stopped playing defense, which was one thing that we're not really used to seeing from LA. If you know anything about Brian Agler, you know how much he loves defense and how much he preaches defense. There was a lot of forced shots, a lot of ill-advised threes, a lot of bad body language. There was a couple of players who just gave up in the middle of the game, which is something that you don't want to see. You can't lead a team like that. You can't show a team like that. You can't expect other players on the team to play well when and follow your lead if you look like that on the court. I mean, it was just bad all around. I mean, you got to give it to Indy, though. They played a really good game. They came back. They caught up. I mean, Indy's a good team. I think Indy's definitely going to make the playoffs. They're a tough team. They're not just going to sit down and let you beat them like that. And hopefully LA learns from it and they take what they did and they move on and hopefully play a better game against Atlanta, because Atlanta's another team where you can't just sit down and press the brakes once you get up. Atlanta's a team that's, even without Angel, I mean, we've seen how they've been playing so far. It's not a team that you can just let them get comfortable and do their thing. So it was just bad all around. I mean, hopefully they get it together, and hopefully a better game and better effort would be played from them.
Crystal, too, I think that what we've seen from the Sparks, too, is they have seemed to not, they have seemed, at least in recent seasons, to not be a very good road team regardless. Now, again, they did win, 3 games on the road to win the series against the Lynx in the league final last year to win their first title since 2002. They had won, in hostile, they had won in, at Target Center or Excel Center during their time there. And it just seems like, though, at least regular season, notably either losses in Phoenix and Atlanta last year that, of course, ended their very impressive start to the season. Seattle's also been a couple places. Crystal, in your mind, though, and I think that you and I have experienced, though, too, in our playing careers, though, is, can you sometimes notice, though, that teams don't necessarily play their A game or play well, particularly in road games at all? Have you ever noticed that in either in your time playing or even other sports that you've seen?
I mean, it depends. I think it all depends, because me personally, I loved and love playing road games. Like, I think I'd rather play a road game sometimes than a home game, depending on the atmosphere, because there's nothing better than getting a win on somebody else's court. I mean, it's one of the best things in the world. So I think it also depends on the person. I mean, yeah, a lot of players don't play well, especially in a pro setting or even a college setting. You're going in a different time zone. I mean, you have players that literally just came back from Turkey, so they're probably still a little jet lag from that. So I think you put it all together, they just look tired. I mean, they didn't look ready. They had a really tremendous effort in the first half, and they kind of just came out with no effort in the second half. So I think you have to put all that together and kind of just look at them and say maybe they needed rest. But I mean, I don't know. It all depends. For them, I know LA kind of always had a little bit of problems on the road. I mean, last year obviously they fixed it because they won the championship, but years prior that was always their Achilles heel was road games. So I mean, it's hard to tell, honestly. I mean, for some people love it, for some it's hell, but for them it's kind of hard. It's like a mix.
One quick comment in the chat box, Crystal, from Michael, who writes in to say, guys, good show. He says Sparks let too much time go off the clock on their last defensive possession, and they left Sidney Weiss on the bench when they needed a 3 at the end. So obviously, I think, though, as well, Crystal, it's kind of tough, though, when you come off of such one great game to kind of duplicate that success. Would you agree about how Sidney Weiss comes off, a monumental rookie debut, and again, somewhat, doesn't have her scoring touch in the second game after, an amazing performance last week?
Well, she's still a rookie and it's her first road trip, so I think she's more so getting acquainted to the WNBA lifestyle on the road. Sorry about that, my computer just went off. I think it's more so of her getting used to life on the road as a WNBA athlete. It's different from college. It's not quite the same. I mean, sometimes you're traveling the same day you have the game. Sometimes you get in the same day. So I mean, it's a little different, but I do agree that Sidney Weiss should have been on the floor at the last possession. I think Candace taking that shot was a really bad choice. I mean, it would have been a 2 anyway because her foot was on the line, but I just don't know. I don't think, honestly, that was a play that Agler drew up. I think something kind of happened and that was their only choice, but I agree with him. I think Sidney Weiss should have been on the floor for that moment. I mean, there's either two things that could have happened. She would have lucked up and made it, or she would have missed and they would have lost either way.
And Michael, thanks for the comment. Keep them coming. Thanks for watching tonight's program as well. Crystal Neko-Ogwumike, I mean, what more can we say about, building off an MVP season, 24 points today, keeping her team in this ball game when when all things went downhill in the second half of play, but still, though, showing up, making the big plays, getting big-time baskets. Crystal, how would you probably assess Nneka's play coming off the MVP season last year and now carrying that over through 3 games now for Los Angeles so far this early in the season?
Nneka's playing well. I mean, Nneka's already in midseason form. She's showing you why she was MVP last year. And, I hate to do this because it's so early. It's only 4 games in, and I feel like it's kind of hard to tell really who's in position for the MVP right now because, like I said, it's a long season. Things could happen. Players' points can drop off. Production can drop off. But, I mean, she's looking like she's in the MVP race right now. so was Griner and Fouls. Like I said, it's too early to really tell though. But I mean, she's anything less from that. I mean, she was MVP last year for a reason.
Crystal, to the Fever now. Again, Indiana, very important win for a team, of course, as we've talked about plenty of times on here. New coach, new system. Marissa Coleman, probably one of her better games in recent memory. 19 points for Coleman, and then following suit was Candace Dupree, 18 points. Crystal, for Coleman at least, obviously waived by Los Angeles after the conclusion of the 2013 season, and really has found a home and really found her groove with in recent seasons with the Fever. Of course, having a breakout season in 2014, a part of that team. They got to the WNBA finals a few seasons ago. Crystal, I guess, can you kind of talk about how you've seen Coleman progress from her time in LA and now over to Indiana?
She's progressed greatly. I just think the thing with Coleman is she has a confidence issue. When she's on, her shot's amazing. Like today, I mean, obviously, she must ate her Wheaties or something before the game because she was on fire. Um, when she's confident like that, she's a scary player. I mean, she's a really great shooter. When she believes in it, and when her team believes in her, and which they did, they kept passing her the ball. I think that would be my only thing. The only negative thing I say about it is her confidence issue, but she's improved a lot. Like she's really proved herself as one of the premier shooters in this league. If she could keep it up for the season, I mean, who knows? Maybe she'll be at the top when it comes to her 3-point shooting this season.
Crystal, there's three words that always come to mind when I talk about players getting dealt or traded or what have you. Change of scenery, and I think that has really benefited for Candace Dupree so far. Had a great game for Indy today, again, 18 points, and it seems like somewhat, okay, maybe this is, a 4-game sample size, Crystal, but maybe in a way, though, this is a way for Candace Dupree to somewhat maybe resurrect or get her career back on track after probably what she would even call probably one of her, worst seasons probably in her time when she was with Phoenix last season. Of course, battling the trade rumors and all the rumors that were swirling around her and her future in Phoenix. Crystal, how would you assess the 4-game sample size for Candace Dupree in Indiana so far?
Her first game it was so, but I think that's because she was really getting used to the system and the team and where everybody liked the ball and where everybody likes to move. But after that, she kind of got it rolling, and I can really see them. I could see her being big for them. I was pretty excited when I found out she got traded to Indiana because I thought just like what happened would be the same thing that happens. She goes off. She has a really good game. I think she takes the load off of Brianne January for scoring. I feel like Brianne January doesn't have to always worry about scoring, and she could just be a contributor. I think, honestly, I think she is probably. I mean, obviously, you're not going to replace Tamika Catchings yet. I mean, you can't. That's a legend. But I think as far as how veteran leadership goes, she's probably, the really a really good choice for them. She's, she's been in championship. She's had a ring. She's been there before. I'm not saying like anybody else in the Fever's been there before because obviously the Fever won. But I think that's definitely the kind of veteran leadership they need to not quite replace Tamika, but, give them that same kind of edge.
So again, folks, the Fever rally back after a big halftime deficit to take down the LA Sparks 93-90. We'll have more from this game right now with this next news story. Of course, Crystal, Spectrum Sportsnet today, the Sparks television station out here in Southern California, elected to simulcast the Fever stream from WNDY My TV from Indianapolis. And we did get to see Catch herself, her first game as an analyst, and Crystal, I thought she hit a grand slam today. It was probably just as, obviously it's tough for fans to, of course, kind of see former players that they have admired for so long, kind of step onto the other side of the sport itself, either broadcasting, front office work, of course, Catch in charge of something with the player staff of the Fever and the Pacers too. Crystal, at least seeing the game today, how would you grade Catch's first broadcast tonight on local television?
Oh, I thought she did a great job. She felt comfortable. She knows what she's talking about. She knows the game. She knows the team. I think I don't. Is she gonna? Do we know if she's gonna be doing that often, or is that just a one-time thing? Because
I've not really heard anything yet from anyone from the Fever organization or WNDY, but I would assume she'd at least be somewhat making occasional appearances every now and then, I think.
Yeah, she did a really good job. I mean, I think honestly, If she didn't know what she was doing after basketball, which she does, she works for that organization. I feel like being an analyst is definitely in her calling. Did a really good job, knows the game. Obviously, she's a legend. She's been around the game. Very entertaining to listen to. I think she did a tremendous job.
Also, Crystal, one more story here. This was something, of course, that was kind of staying with this game as well, folks. But Crystal, a story though that was really had light shed on it during the offseason once the Final Four ended, and this also happened today with the Indy Tribune, Crystal, and also somewhat from Pokey Chapman, who called the Sparks in her mind, referred to them as the Golden State Warriors. Crystal, I know that this has been not really a sensitive, but it has been a talking point, though, of course, with what we've heard from Kelsey Plum during for the draft. Crystal, pretty plain simple, but is it time for us to do away with the male comparisons to female athletes in your mind across the whole sports world spectrum?
I've always felt so. I've always hated when they compare women athletes to men. I think it's unfair for the women. I mean, there's a lot of women who have come before them, especially in women's basketball, they could compare themselves to, that they can get compared to. There's a lot of women's greats that, even before the WNBA was around, there's a lot of women's greats who played overseas and Olympics and stuff that they could be compared to. And I just think it's unfair. I just don't like the comparison at all. So I think we should get rid of comparing women to men's athletes.
Crystal, and I'll admit I'm just as guilty of either comparing stuff that that happens in the WNBA to either Major League Baseball or what have you. I know I'm guilty of that firsthand. I admit that right here and now. But I think though that I think it was really though spurred on by Kelsey Plum. Of course, I think she had done a couple interviews in the Players Tribune about it, or had done some interviews about Obviously, it was more so about the comparison of Kelsey to James Harden of the Houston Rockets. Crystal, as well, staying with this is obviously I know that it's kind of hard to not talk about other professional sports in regards to either comparing a certain play that happened in a different sport. But Crystal, what other ways, I guess, obviously other than maybe comparing female athletes to female athletes, but really, I know it's a tough habit to break, but can this habit, though, of these comparisons be broken, though, eventually sometime soon?
I think so. I just think, honestly, when it comes from analysts, they just compare what they know. And a lot of analysts, especially more men analysts who mostly cover men's basketball, they just know men's basketball. So I don't think you can really fault them for that. I think they just see what they see and they're like, oh, Kelsey Plum and James Harden, or like how they used to compare. I forgot who they compare Kenneth Parker to, but I think they just see it and that's kind of what they know. So they're kind of just like, oh, I guess it's okay to compare this player to this player. But I mean, I think eventually when they start watching the game or when they start doing more research on the game, they'll figure it out and they'll realize that there's more than just, that there's more than just women players. That there's more than just men that you compare the women to.
Yeah, obviously tough habit to break, but again, I thought it was really great though. Again, that Kelsey Plum somewhat was kind of the focal point of talking about that as well. And I think though, Crystal, I think and I know that we talk about this a lot though too in regards to NBA players don't care about the WNBA, but Crystal, when we've seen obviously with Magic Johnson, or we've seen Kobe Bryant go to Sparks games, or Devin Booker and Tyson Chandler going to Suns games, or even when Kevin Durant was going to Lynx games. Crystal, obviously, I know that obviously that's a tough habit to break, but Crystal, Crystal, in your mind, where is the respect line, I guess, between the NBA players and their WNBA counterparts? Obviously, we've seen plenty of them go to games, but Crystal, in your mind, though, where though is that line of respect though for the NBA players towards their WNBA counterparts in regards to some of these comparisons that we've heard from time to time?
Well, that's the thing. I think the NBA players have a lot and a ton of respect for WNBA players. I mean, we see it all the time. I think it's just certain fans and media that paints the picture that's making it seem like the NBA players have no respect for WNBA players at all. You actually see a lot of NBA players at WNBA games. It's actually not rare to see them at all. So I think it's more so the outside world and certain medias who aren't used and familiar with the sport that are comparing it that probably make it seem like it's a bad thing.
So with that, Chris, we'll move on now to a couple final topics here. First and foremost, Thursday game, folks. Only one game on your Thursday schedule for the WNBA, and it's a early morning or a morning game for us West Coasters during breakfast time. Wings and Stars, the first matchup of the are we going to call this the battle for the Alamo or the Lone Star State battle? I don't know yet. We'll work on a name for that rivalry pretty soon. Again, that's at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern, live streaming tomorrow morning via Twitter for tomorrow's game. Crystal, it's only you and me tonight for predictions. We the panel went 1-1 for today's games. We won the Washington game, lost the LA game. Crystal, two young teams that are right now going in somewhat polar opposite directions. Of course, the Stars looking for win number 1 of the season. The Wings up there right now in the upper third of the league standing so far. Crystal, who you got and why for this game tomorrow morning?
It kind of cut off. You tomorrow was, I forgot the. Can you give
Dallas
me
and San Antonio.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. My bad. Yeah, I couldn't hear you. You know what? I know San Antonio is going to have Kelsey Plum making her debut as well as Mariah Jefferson. But Dallas is a really tough team. I mean, we saw how they got after it. Dallas, but I have a feeling the game will be close because of who's playing tomorrow. But I will go with Dallas.
No, Crystal, I have Dallas too, but in a squeaker, much like I said about the LA-Indiana game being a squeaker. This game, I think, Crystal, give it a few years, and this is going to be a very, very fun matchup to watch when both these teams develop all these young, shining stars, for both teams, not just in San Antonio, but also in Dallas. Between the play of Alicia Gray and Kayla Davis with the Wings over the past couple games, and honestly the much anticipated hyped debut of Kelsey Plum and the return of Mariah Jefferson, a game that I think is going to go both ways. This may be a game, Crystal, that goes down wire to wire tomorrow, but I still like Dallas. I think just by virtue of maybe somewhat of the veteran experience between Diggins and then some of these young kids going up there. But I do like Dallas, but Crystal, I agree with you. It's going to be in a very close game. And Crystal, with that being said, this is I think this is still the lone interstate rivalry amongst the WNBA so far with Dallas and San Antonio. Crystal, what would you name this rivalry if, in fact, it does get to that status in a couple years between these two, again, very exciting clubs to watch?
Well, just generic, just the Battle of Texas. I mean, nothing really special.
Battle of Texas. I say Lone Star. I'd probably say the Lone Star State Shootout to kind of go with the theme of the Old West, or I don't know. But we'll probably run a poll question for that maybe along the next couple of days. But again, folks, one game tomorrow: Wings and Stars, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, live streaming. Game number 3, live streaming on Twitter. 3 down, 17 more to go with the Twitter stream. And Crystal, I know that we had talked about the Twitter deal during the off season and during and after the first game. But Crystal, I mean, I think I still though think of how amazing this is that we get one game on Twitter. You can, and as Marquez said, you can go picture in picture, or you can look through your timeline while watching the game in the like little picture in picture, and then all the analytics. Again, over 1 million people watching the first game. Crystal, in a way, how has the Twitter stream really changed the way that you can watch, or that fans will be able to watch WNBA games in regards to either of course, minus local television, or even, of course, League Pass?
Oh, I think the Twitter, I got tongue-tied. I think the Twitter stream is actually pretty cool. I mean, it did 1 million views when they first introduced it. So, I mean, like I said earlier, that lets you know if you make it to the point where it's available to people, they will definitely watch it. I think it was a pretty great idea from the WNBA to utilize their marketing. I mean, we've talked about that in the past, how we feel that they should market better and use their marketing for, I guess, a better chance. And they did it. And it looks really good. I mean, sometimes, honestly, the Twitter stream sometimes works better than League Pass does. And it's a very clear. I really don't have any complaints with it. I think it's awesome.
By the way, real quick, one of our loyal viewers, Christy Wilson, wrote in saying, "Hi, everyone," and waving hands emoji. She says, "I have been loving watching the games on Twitter." Now, again, Crystal, over 1 million people watched the Dallas and Phoenix game to start off the season with the first Twitter stream. Crystal, I know that we had talked about other avenues in regards to from Twitter. Crystal, we brought up Facebook Live also being an avenue. Of course, that's being utilized by the NBA's G League starting next season in regards to them having the games live streamed on Facebook Live. We have Twitter as well. We've also had post-game interviews live streamed. Crystal, I guess kind of to bank off that last question, but really though, in 2017, how big of a role though is social media playing for not just the WNBA, Crystal, but for all facets of sports? I mean, you can go and get fantasy advice from any other sports league. You can get, pregame and postgame interviews from either your favorite analyst or TV station or radio station. Crystal, how has social media, minus the trolls and memes and gimmicks that go on, but how has it though really benefited sports fans that have maybe cut the cord or cut the cable and got rid of television in regards to interviews and even, of course, live game streams? How has our social media platforms really helped the sports world continue to grow and thrive every day?
I think it's cool, honestly. Like you said, a lot of people are getting rid of cable because of cost and going with things like Sling and a few other subscription plans. And honestly, I think it's cool that Twitter and just social media in general is letting you watch sports on TV. And I feel like because of it, more people will actually watch now. I think, especially since it's free and doesn't cost anything, Twitter, I don't know about the other places, but especially for Twitter, since it's free and doesn't cost anything, I don't think he's going wrong with it. I think it's a perfect idea, and I feel like more sports will soon get on the wave of streaming games on Twitter and probably get their ratings up as well.
And Crystal, let's not forget though too. Along with Sling and Roku, as you mentioned, but also you can now start live streaming on your PlayStation or on your Xbox now. So really, this is becoming a really big thing now in regards to people streaming. We talk about Netflix, we talk about Netflix shows or what have you being streamed, but now, this is just another great way to help improve sports in all facets. Christy Wilson says WNBA should definitely consider Facebook Live, and I think, Crystal, I think that we all could agree that we thought that this was going to be a dry run for these 3 years. But Crystal, if in fact that the WNBA does get a really good return or good feedback for a change, of course, to all the negativity that we always hear about it or that they probably get from fans on a daily basis, could they also add a Facebook Live feature too, along with the Twitter live streams within the next couple of years, maybe once that first Twitter deal does expire after the 2018 season?
I think Facebook Live would work out. Facebook Live, though, it has a lot of, just like anything, it has a lot of technical issues, though. Every time I've been trying to get on Facebook Live, sometimes it freezes and all that stuff. But if they could figure it out, why not? It would still be free. A lot of people could still watch it, and I think a lot of people would enjoy it the same way. So I say give it a go.
Definitely. So again, folks, once more, Wings and Stars tomorrow morning, Pacific time, 9 a.m. local time here in Southern California, 12 o'clock, noontime, lunchtime Eastern, 10 a.m., and also 11 a.m. Central time for that game tomorrow at AT&T Center. Again, it will be live streaming on Twitter, folks, so go ahead and watch the game and use the hashtag WNBA Live, and let's have a good time tomorrow morning watching that first game. Again, Crystal, with that, again, 2 games tonight. Let's get your final thoughts. Again, the Mystics win Atlanta Deladon's homecoming, and the Fever with a very nice win over the defending champs. What caught your eye? What is your final thoughts on tonight's 2 games?
They kind of went the way I expected. I actually thought that the Chicago game and Washington game would be closer, which it was up until about like late third quarter, early fourth quarter. I'm getting so tongue-tied today. I don't know what it is. They were entertaining. I know the Indiana and LA game was very entertaining. That one was entertaining for a whole multitude of reasons. Marissa Coleman looking like her old self from Maryland. Candace Dupree looking like her old prime self. So, it was just fun watching these 2 teams compete. Well, 4 teams compete, rather. And it just lets you know that this WNBA season's heating up and we still have a whole lot more to go.
Crystal, it looks like, the top 8 teams minus Minnesota, of course, still unbeaten, that, there's a logjam of 2-1 teams and they all can go different directions. And I know that I'm sure that once teams get things worked out, that they'll be fine. But I think with the Mystics game, I agree, though, Crystal, we were in for a good one until the Sky really just, they hit rock bottom in that third quarter, as you mentioned, and the Mystics ran away with that ball game. Like I tweeted out, Crystal, Indy, LA, epic game tonight. Just, how, obviously the Sparks, incrementally blowing the game in the second half. But again, the Fever not saying die, rallying back, as you said, with Marissa Coleman playing a phenomenal game this evening for the Fever. And of course, Candace Dupree somewhat finding herself once more with a great game too. And even despite the loss, Crystal, you can't overlook what Candace Parker and Neko Ogumake both did for this LA Ball Club. Again, they had another, monster game for both those players tonight. But of course, NO 24 points in the way. But of course, the Fever picked up the very well. Both teams deserved that W, but obviously the better team got it for the Indiana LA game, and of course the Mystics winning the homecoming game for Elena Deladon. Christy Wilson says these games have been much more entertaining than the NBA playoffs right now. Just my opinion. And of course, we've seen that, of course, with the NBA. But also, I think, though, Crystal, all the games so far in the WNBA, I know we've had a couple of blowouts here and there, but Crystal, for the most part, though, they've been very, very close this season. What does that say about the parity of the WNBA for 2017 through at least a sample size of roughly 4 games for everybody?
I mean, it just lets you know that the league is getting better. I mean, every year a better product gets on the floor. I mean, next year the product's probably going to be better than this year, and so on and so forth. It just lets you know that it's very competitive. I honestly think the league was competitive, but it got more competitive when they implemented the new playoff structure, and I think that's when teams really started to realize, like, okay, we can't just do enough just to make it this time. Like, we really have to make it. It's the first 4-8. The first 8 and nothing else. So I think now teams are really trying their hardest to actually play. Because of it, you won't have so many teams trying to tank anymore.
Yeah, no, I think that with that new format in place, they really did some wonders right there with that in regards to how you've seen the competitive fire and nature of all these athletes come out of them, and you've seen of how much every team wants it, regardless if they're 4-0 or 0-3. They all want to be in that playoff mix. They all want to, do well for their city, for their organization and franchise. But again, totally agree with Christy about, our game, about the WNBA games being way more entertaining so far than the NBA playoffs. With that. But again, folks, to reiterate once more your final scores for this evening for Wednesday night, May 24th, 2017, Mystics 82, Sky 67, Fever 93, Sparks 90. All those are finals in the WNBA today. And as a reminder, one game tomorrow on Thursday morning, Dallas and San Antonio, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, live streaming on Twitter, hashtag WNBA Live to interact with everybody during the course of that ball game. Program one for you folks. We will be off tomorrow night. We'll rejoin you folks back here on Friday at 9:30 Pacific time, 12:30 a.m. Eastern to recap a full slate of games on Friday for the WNBA. With that, folks, for Crystal Thomas in LA, Cal McClurg from San Diego signing off. And we'll see you folks back here again on Friday. Until then, folks, have a safe night. Drive home safely. Thanks for joining us. This has been the WNBA 365 Network here, folks. Good night, and we'll see you back here on Friday. Bye-bye.